200 years ago, the early canal engineers had a problem. Water is on the level, land is not. Hills were bad news. The canal builders found ways around, over or through them. It seemed Victorian ingenuity had no limits. But even the most brilliant engineers had no answers to these, the mountains of Eryri or Snowdonia in North Wales. Yet the canals changed life here, just as they did in the industrial heartlands. Snowdonia had a valuable commodity it could now get to market. Its legacy can still be seen today. The Midlands canals were a revelation in transporting slate.
There was slate quarrying going on in this area, perhaps back as far as the 15th and 16th centuries. But lots of that early quarrying was little more than disorganised scratching on the surface of the land. The change in the industry took place from the 1770s and 1780s onwards. Slate is obviously, a bulky and heavy and fragile material as well. Roofing slates can be quite easily broken, so transporting roofing slates isn't at all easy. In days before canals, slate had to be carried using pack horses and carts more latterly. A horse and cart can hardly move perhaps 2 tons at the most. So the demand was then for an efficient method and means of moving this heavy and fragile material, and canals obviously would be more suitable as a method. There are no canals in this part of North West Wales. It's a case of carrying the slate from ports like Bangor, Felinheli, Caernarfon and so on, to canal-connected facilities on the Mersey, for example, to feed those slates onto the canal network and then carry those slates on to the industrial heartlands of England and down, of course, using the Trent and Mersey Canal into Birmingham and the West Midlands itself.
And from the late 1700s, right past Shugborough Hall, which was the reason this historic home of the Anson family was not quite what it appeared.
Well, I think I'd like to call it slate obsession, because it seems as though they've used slate wherever they possibly can. It's not just on the roof where in the obvious ways, but they've actually lined all the walls, that is the inside walls as well as the outside walls, with slate. They've even used it as pretend stone columns. The actual colonnade looks like stone pillars, but is in fact pieces of wood completely covered in thin strips of slate that were shaped to make them look like stone columns. What we're trying to do here is impress everybody with how rich and how well connected the Anson family are. So the whole of the outside was then painted with a sandy paint to make it look like Portland stone.
But at a fraction of the price, with low-cost delivery on the new Trent and Mersey Canal, right to its doorstep.
In the 1770s, brand new canal, a tip-top condition. So it would be very easy indeed to get the slate and indeed other building materials here. They even made shelves out of it.
So whose idea was it to ship in slate from North Wales? Enter the architect Samuel Wyatt.
This suited him because he was a very innovative architect, but it also suited his family because Samuel's brother, Benjamin, at the same time was the agent of the Penrhyn Quarries Bethesda.
So you wonder whether he was using slate perhaps in interesting and exciting new ways to benefit himself, but I haven't said that, of course.
The cladding behind the slate rotted years ago, and it had to come off. But there are still a few remnants. Slate walls and shelving can also be seen inside the building.
The roof's still intact, and its original Wyatt roof, still protecting this wonderful treasure house and all its goodies for us to enjoy today.
Across Britain, the canals meant boom time for Welsh slate.
The industry wouldn't have developed in this area as it did were it not for the provision of the canal network in respect of carrying this heavy, bulky and fragile material to its markets in the industrial heartlands of Britain.
Which is a subject close to Dafydd's heart, as he cruises the Midlands canals on his own narrow boat. Do you find yourself looking out, looking for slate on the roofs?
Well, as you explore the canal system, of course, you'll notice all sorts of buildings which are provided by those who are taking advantage of the canal network to build industrial buildings around the canals. And almost always, invariably, they're roofed with Welsh slate, carried there on the canals themselves.
But the slate